Welcome back to On Therapy with Cy and Paul. I'm Simon Sanborn.
I'm Paul Jacobson.
Good to see you today, Paul.
Yeah, it's good to see you too, Simon. I'm so glad to be back at it.
You got it. Yep. Got some things to share?
You bet. I just wanted to share once again with our audience that some of the topics we discuss can be kind of sensitive. It might hit home, could be slightly triggering. And I just want you all to know that, we are talking about some hard things that a lot of men deal with. Um, I also want to share that, this is not therapy, but we do talk about therapy and try to demystify it, and try to get people to see a little bit about what it's like to be listening to a therapist, to interact. And we just wanted to try to make people see that, going to see a therapist is not that scary. Simon and I we're two regular guys that just want to help.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, and if you're listening to us for the first time, we're really grateful that you're here and you're taking the opportunity to listen to what we have to say. Hopefully, you get some nuggets of information that you can take with you today. So we really appreciate you being here. And so today's topic is going to be about parenting, and we're going to kind of focus on the idea of masculinity in parenting, what it's like to become a parent, some of the things, I hate to use the term baggage because that usually comes with bad connotations, but I think we can have good baggage too, the things that we've learned.
Yeah.
So it could be good and bad, I guess.
Yeah.
But for us, it's more about it's not necessarily good or bad. It's what is that information? Do we want that information to be different, change it? Can we have a different way of being? How can we show up differently as fathers, maybe that might be beneficial to ourselves and to our family and our kids? So I think that's a great spot just to start out with. And I'll just say right away that I am still wiping tears away from my face because Paul and I were just talking about how much we love and appreciate each other as friends and having this time together. And I think that's important to point out that, we often, there's most, I think I just keep hearing these stats of men not having very many friends and a lot of men saying they don't have any friends. And I'm
Yeah.
just, that's so heartbreaking to me because I have, you know, a good chunk of, I have four or five very close friends that I
Mhm.
know I can call on at any time. And they know they can call on me at any time and show up emotionally, show up physically to move something, whatever it is. And I can't imagine my life without my friends in it. And so that really is heartbreaking to me. And I think that's a good thing to kind of point out that we can, if we are not having connections with other people, and we get in that that's just going to make you isolated, just all by itself. And we hear a lot about like incels and things like that, and I fucking hate that. I hate labels like that because it pathologizes somebody to the point where it's like, oh, they're just an incel, and so they have this problem, and then they're just kind of stuck there. And I
Mhm.
think by using that kind of language, we don't allow for any growth for people. And so if you don't know how to, the idea of like, I'm heartbroken because people don't have friends, but maybe the person who doesn't is like, I don't even know what the hell to do. Like, how do I get out of this situation?
Yeah,
So
right.
again, I think that pulled it back into therapy. Why do I feel like I want to be isolated? Why do I feel like I don't have maybe the ability to make friends? And it's a really good example of how therapy can be beneficial in the sense of what's blocking me, for lack of a better word? What's keeping me kind of isolated? What's the fear maybe? And again, understanding that, there's nothing broken or wrong with you. You just think of things differently. So let's figure that shit out and see if we can make some change.
Right. Yeah. And we can kind of experience some momentum there, Simon, of
Mm,
things just keep staying the same, and that
yeah.
can feel like a block, or it's like, man, this just isn't happening for me. I want to hang out with my friends, or I want to meet new people, but I'm just not doing what it's going to take to make that happen. And why?
Hmm.
Why am I in this loop that just never seems to end? I
Yeah.
want to make it different. I want to hang out with my friends, and
Yeah.
I,
Yeah. Yeah, we want to be able to, I mean, we are human beings are biologically built for connection. We need to be in a tribe. We need to be in a group. We need to be in some kind of unit that allows us to connect with another human being. Otherwise, we kind of wither, on the vine, so to speak. So, but we'll just finish up that talk. But I just want to just reiterate my love for you, Paul, and I just really appreciate this time we're spending together so we can leap into this wonderful topic of masculinity in men.
Yeah, yeah,
It'll
yeah.
be interesting.
Yep.
I love this first question we had talked about, and I'll have to put my glasses on because I'm
Yeah.
old. Um, the father you had versus the father you want to be. And
Mm.
I really, when I first saw that, I was like, God, I love that. Like that's
Yeah.
a powerful statement in there. So maybe you could tell a bit what resonated with you about that.
Yeah. Yeah. The father you had versus the father you want to be.
Mm,
And w- Simon, us being family therapists, we really have learned a lot, and really had to dig into, um, our parents, our dad learned how to be a dad from his dad, and his dad learned how to be a dad from his dad, and this is all run downhill, right? To us, and now, if we're a parent, how we were a dad to our kids and how our kids will, be a parent to their kids.
mm,
And are we just going through the motions, just doing what we've learned, or are we trying to be different on purpose? If our dad did something that we don't really look back on fondly of, we want to do it differently. How are we doing it differently on purpose?
mm.
Um, I talk to a lot of my clients about this.
Yeah, and I think the intentionality about that is really important because I want to do things differently than the way I was raised, then we're really being thoughtful and conscious and intentional about what we want to do differently. And that being said, then how do I go about it?
Mm,
And I think, if somebody's listening to this podcast for the first time and they're, maybe they're a new parent or maybe they're going to be an empty nester at some point. Did I do a good job? All my kids are moving on. Did I do everything that I wanted to do? And I think being conscious of that is really important because it then impacts our intentionality with the way we express ourselves, how we guide our kids, how we teach our kids, how discipline shows up, and the different kind of dynamics that are in a relationship, with like our spouse. How does a man show up differently than a mom?
mm,
What's our role? And one of the things that we had kind of brushed on too was, did fatherhood soften you, toughen you, or confuse you? And
mm.
I, it confused the shit out of me. I had
Uh,
two very dynamically different parents. So I had a stepfather and I had a dad. And so they both communicated very differently and they
mm,
both parented very differently. And going back between those two places on a regular basis, I was getting informed each place of kind of how to be. And
yeah, just how
so,
different it is.
oh my God. And so when I became a parent, and I probably have said this before, but I had a picture of me holding my first son, and I looked and even though I had kind of helped take care of a lot of my brothers and sisters and kind of had been, not parenting, but been in their lives and know how to do all the stuff to take care of a newborn,
Mm,
in a sense. I saw a picture of me and I looked really confused when I was holding him, and it hurt me. Like I was like, "Oh God, is that how I parented?" Was because like, oh, like this look of like, oh shit, what's next?
uh,
Um, and now looking back, though, I was really intentional about doing it differently, but it wasn't a conscious and God, how do I put this? It wasn't a conscious, this is back to the confusion part. It was conscious. I'm not going to be like this aspect of one of my fathers, say.
mm,
Um, I'm not going to do that thing, right?
yeah,
We have plenty of people that, my dad was physically abusive, verbally abusive, and I'm not going to be like him. And so they didn't do the physical abuse stuff, but they definitely were verbally abusive.
mm,
And
hmm.
so there is some intention there, but then I think other things that was the worst part for them, maybe that there was some physical abuse.
Uh,
So I don't want my child to experience the physical abuse, and we forget about the other pieces. So
mm,
that confusion that can happen of like, what should I be intentional about
yeah.
is can be really hard of how do I approach this in a holistic way, not just one specific thing.
Hmm.
So that can be really confusing too.
Right. Yeah. And with that confusion can be as a parent, sometimes we do the things that we're completely against, but we can't help it.
Mm,
We don't want to yell. We don't want to raise a hand. We don't want to put down our kids, but we can't stop it sometimes. And why is that? And it's one of the things that therapy is helpful for, is bringing that clarity of why is it that I keep doing the thing that I don't want to.
hmm Yeah. And it doesn't it often comes with regret. I've talked about how I regret some of the ways I parented. I tried to be very conscious of what I was doing, but then with, especially specifically one of my kids, he was a tough kid, wonderful kid, but a tough kid to parent. And and I didn't understand what was happening for him. I wasn't a therapist at the time. And even though I was a behavior specialist at the time, being a parent is different than being a teacher. And I remember talking to my therapist about it of like, God, why can't I keep my shit together with this kid when I can do it all day long as a BD teacher? Like,
Yeah.
what's wrong with me? Why can't I figure this out? And she's like, it's totally different. And I'm like, how's it different? He's a kid. These are kids. Like,
I
give me a
know.
break. And
Yeah.
she's like, no. She's like, no, it's different. You're in a relationship with him. And now I understand that my volatile actions were due to my fear of not knowing what he was experiencing, maybe my fear of the future for him. It could show up in there's so many things that could be happening and just in this one specific area. I think it goes
Right.
back to the confusion too of like, did it soften me? Did it harden me? Did it make me confused? That confusion, I think, hardened me with him
Yeah.
and it softened me with others, which is kind of interesting too, how it can be a flexible thing. Our thinking isn't as rigid as we think it is. And we want it to be. It would make life a lot simpler. But it's just not like that. There's no black and white. It's just all different shades of gray. I think I got that from Dr. Heather in the very beginning of ethics class, where I was like, yes, I need some yeses and some nos. And there are yeses and nos for sure.
Uh-huh.
But the whole idea, though, is most of it's pretty gray. You don't sleep with your clients. Pretty
Mhm.
yes and no if you want to be a therapist and stay a therapist.
Mhm.
But when it comes to other aspects, there's a lot of ambiguity in there that we
Yeah.
just don't know about. And if we don't know, we don't know. And I know people are going to get tired of hearing that. I might have a t-shirt that says it, so I have to keep saying it. But I think I think that like not knowing what to do is really a good thing to be aware of as well. If I become a new parent, somebody's listening to this and they're a brand new parent, and I don't know what the hell I'm going to do. I
Yeah.
thought I did,
Mhm.
but now I'm in this position where I have this baby that's mine, my responsibility. I need to provide for it, all those things. To me, that's where a lot of the confusion can come into how we just kind of function day to day of being a parent. But I
Yeah.
also feel like if you're new listening to this, that's the best part about therapy. Again, you're not coming in to say, hey, I'm fucked up. You're coming in to say, I'm a new parent. And this is really harder than I thought it was going to be. And I'm really confused. I could really use some help kind of sorting out my thinking, maybe sorting out how I was raised so I can be the most present father I can be,
Mhm.
um, or mom for that matter. And that's the best part is like all the things I've gained from therapy, I were all like self-revelatory almost, where I got to this like, oh, okay. Wow. Okay, now I can see that. Now I can see that the confusion between having these two fathers that were so diametrically opposite of each other when they parented.
Uh-huh.
I was like, okay, that makes a lot of sense. That clarifies a little bit of the confusion and gives me a little bit of footing so that I can move forward in a way where I feel like, okay, I have some idea of how I can do this differently. I don't want to be like this. I want to be like this. How can I move forward? And a therapist can be really helpful just sorting out our thinking, first of all,
Right.
and
Right.
then giving us some tools.
For sure. Simon, one of the things that you mentioned, I'm really curious about. You were talking about one of your sons and how he was maybe especially challenging. Did you happen to notice yourself in him?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like,
absolutely.
sometimes we see that our kids are showing the very same things that we might do in that situation. It's like, no, we need to fix this. This needs to change because this is going to lead to bad things. And man, we're really invested then.
Hmm. Yes, absolutely. And that's a really good point, Paul. Yes, I saw my ADHD in him. He probably has as heavy ADHD as I do.
Hmm.
Um, and so when I first realized the level of ADHD that I had and the meds I got on and how much they helped me, I really pushed that on my kids. And so they started taking meds to help like in high school, and it did help, but they didn't like how it made them feel. I
Oh.
had such a lived experience of this scatteredness, this
Mm.
flakiness, this not showing up on time, like all these things that just drove others crazy, and I just could not figure out. And I didn't want that same experience for them.
Hmm.
And that's why I think I would get so upset because I wanted to not have them have the same experience I did. And
Right.
so that was where the fear came from. And
Mm.
that's where it drove the volume of my voice at times, and I could tell when I was like, why don't you get this? Why don't, I was laying into him very likely how I laid into myself
Ah,
internally is probably what was happening.
yeah.
And I didn't want him to be seen. People think of me as a nice guy, a thoughtful guy, caring, soft, and I love that part of my personality. And I know that if I had been able to understand myself better at the time, I could have leaned more into that aspect of myself to be
Mhm.
more open and thoughtful and caring instead
Uh-huh.
of laying into him. And, did I get yelled at? Did I yell at him like I got yelled at as a kid? No. But I certainly know that it wasn't beneficial. But I
Mm.
absolutely saw the things in him that I saw in myself. And it was such a good question, Paul. It wasn't like, um, I don't want you to be like me. Don't be like me. I've struggled, all these things. It's more of like, I want you to have a good life. And I want you to get to a point where you understand yourself the best that you can have a good life. But that's
Mhm.
all things that I've thought of later, after the fact,
Ah,
right? And
uh-huh.
so,
Huh?
one thing to point out too, if somebody's listening to this for the first time, or there's somebody who's thinking about coming to therapy because they're having similar issues with their kids, there is a space that you can find that allows you to talk about these things and approach these things and be aware of what's happening for you as a parent, as a human being who's had their own lived experience, and being able to hold on to. I just heard a quote. It's a Rumi quote. It's very popular. Damn it, I'm going to try to paraphrase it best I can. Outside of the rights and wrongs, there is a field. Meet me there.
Mhm.
And that really struck home with me. A friend of mine reminded me of that quote yesterday, and it really struck me as it comes to therapy. Because for sure, when it comes to like couples, right? Can we get out of the right and wrong and come to a place that has less judgment, that we can show up together without a bunch of um, you know past experiences and things like that? Can we just show up in this space together to see how we can do things differently and get and kind of set aside the rights and the wrongs. And that alone can be really difficult. When it comes to parenting, that idea of rights and wrongs for me is, can I set aside the things that confuse me? Can I set aside the things that I think I'm doing right or wrong, or the things that happened to me as a kid that were right or wrong? And can I find a space for myself to show up for my kids in a way that I'm not coming with the judgment? Obviously, like you just said, to the things I saw in him, the self-judgment that I was experiencing in those moments, can I
Uh-huh.
find a space to come to so I can approach it in a way that has less judgment? Because I could have shown up in a much different way for him if I didn't have all the judgment I had for myself that he was at a certain age. And I was like, oh my God, it's been 15 years and this is not getting better. What am I doing wrong? What did I not do wrong? How did I raise him? Getting divorced, did that fuck things up? Like there's so many things that were coming along with that. Could I find a space? Could I find that field to let those things go and show up for him differently?
Wow, wow,
So
wow.
really, really good question. And I just kind of like correlated that with that quote in the moment, but so it's probably kind of clunky. But for me, that was a big piece. And that's why now I do it opposite. I do it opposite all the time. All I do for my kids now, and they're adults, so it's a little bit easier. But now what I do is I just show up for them and love the shit out of them, man. I mean, they don't get anything negative from me at all. I don't correct them. I don't go like, hey, how's your budget? What are you doing with your money? Hey, you use your fork when you eat, like all those things that still pop up, right? I am just like, this is so unnecessary. They are adults. I can show up now for them as I want to show up for them now. I want to love them. I want them to know how much I care about them, how much I'm supporting them, and that I'm always here for them. That's all I care about now. And I
Yeah.
think as dads, it's to be able to understand our past experiences and what have influenced us now, because that often comes with a lot of judgment. If we can get some clarity from that, which I think is so beneficial about therapy, is getting some clarity in why we think the way we think about things, why we approach things the way we approach it. If you grew up with a screaming father, you are very likely going to be a screaming dad. I mean, it's
Hmm.
not too far off the mark. Now, you
Yeah.
could be very conscious of like, oh, I'm not going to do that. But
Hmm.
then for me, I shut down emotion. I
Hmm.
didn't have any, I was like, ooh, I don't want to be like that. I'm not going to be a screamer and a yeller. I was a little afraid of my anger at the time. I'm just going to shut that anger down. And we don't just shut down one feeling, we shut down all feelings. When we shut it down, we shut down everything. We can't just shut down fear. We can't just shut down anxiety or depression. We have to shut it all off, which is suppression of our emotions, which then leads into the whole idea of the therapy that we provide.
Hmm. Yeah. And if we're really trying to avoid and shut down those emotions, then what cost does that have?
Hmm.
Right? Um,
Hmm.
maybe we're fixing one problem, but maybe creating a different one.
Yeah, really good point.
And then, it boils down to how in the hell am I supposed to do it then? Like, how am I supposed to? I'm never going to measure up. I'm never going to be a good dad. Uh,
Hmm.
and we can have that doubt sometimes of what is it that we're doing right?
Yeah, and you don't have any markers necessarily of if you're being a good father or not. Do you know what I mean? Like there's
Hmm.
nothing in our society that is like, I mean, yes, there are markers in our society of like you don't abuse your kids. Those are those kind of markers, but we don't necessarily have markers of like, am I doing a good enough job? Like, am I doing okay? And if our kids have issues and struggles, very often that's very normal issues and struggles that all people go through in different phases of their life, especially childhood. And if we see somebody acting a certain, or see our child acting a certain way, and we're like, oh shit, what did I do? Very often as a parent, at least for sure for me as a man, I was like, God, am I not setting them up to be a productive part of society? You know what I mean? And again, they weren't doing anything that was necessarily telling me they were going to be psychopaths or killers or anything, but it was more of like, are they going to be able to have a relationship with someone and have
Uh-huh.
that be a healthy relationship? Are they going to be able to show up for their kids in a way? Like, I mean, I think as parents, we can go down those paths of like, we're seeing these things happen. They're hitting these transitions. They're elementary school, they're middle school, they're high school. We can see these, and are they going to be the person? And we take a lot of those things that we quote unquote think are wrong or mistakes as examples of ourselves. So I fucked up if I see my kid,
Mm,
this hasn't happened, thank God, but my high school, one of my kids in high school, if they got a DUI.
mm,
And I think that most parents would be like, what did I do wrong?
mm.
My kid wouldn't make that kind of mistake if I was a better parent.
Uh,
And I think sometimes our kids make mistakes and then we immediately take it onto ourselves as something that we did incorrectly. And this can kind of go into discipline and things like that too, if we want to. But how do we want to approach these things in a way that connects with our kids and helps them listen and understand? And that goes back to me for when I was yelling at my son, he wasn't hearing me. You know what I mean? He wasn't hearing what I had to say. He didn't hear he didn't understand that there was concern there. He didn't
yeah.
understand there was love there for sure. Why would somebody yell at me if they love me?
Mhm.
There were lots of things that were kind of missing that were probably confusing for him as well.
Mhm.
And so I think we as men can really take on this idea of especially if you have a son and I'm a man, they're going to be a man someday. Am I making them the man that is going to be a good man in this society, and treat women correctly and treat women kindly and with love, and not be misogynistic and be an asshole to people. Like I want them to be this good person. That's my ultimate goal. And I
Yeah.
don't know if it changed. I don't know if I'm sure it's different for different people, but that was always my goal. I just want to have happy, healthy, content kids. That's all I cared about. And looking back, the regrets I have is I'm not sure at times where I did that, where I
Mm,
did the guidance that I thought I did by my actions, maybe is the best way to put it.
right. Yeah. And when we see that our kids are maybe having life happen where things might be really hard for them, whether it's school or friends or sports or driving or whatever it might be. Something happens, they get in a car accident that
Mhm.
it's like, dang, if you would have been paying attention or
Mhm.
whatever it might be. Um, our kids, like our intention is to love on our kids and that we want things to be less difficult for them. Uh,
Mhm.
and we might come across really strongly in a way that we're not really proud of sometimes, but our intention is there,
Yeah,
but how we come across might not always be the best. And we're trying,
we're trying.
right?
Yeah.
We're doing our
Yeah.
best.
And I think it's important to point out too, if I had caught if I had, oh, let's see, if I had learned, let's not caught, if I had learned this sooner. So let's say that I had learned it sooner about how to communicate differently to this one kid. And this
Yeah.
is Henry. This is Henry. I love him. He's just a great, great guy. And is doing fantastic. And
Mhm.
again, and that's probably a good thing to bring up too, is even with the regrets I have and how I would have done things differently, he still turned out pretty damn good.
Yeah.
So that's a good thing to realize too, that we can fuck up, we can make mistakes, and we can have regrets about things. How do we want to do it differently? And like I said, I have started doing it differently the past 3 years, maybe,
Mm.
like he was out of the house and
Oh
he
yeah.
was doing his own thing. And so anyway, I came to these kind of realizations later, and I'm glad too. Again, I brought these things up in therapy because I just wanted to understand myself more so that I could see not necessarily I don't have any kids left anymore necessarily. Well, I'm sorry, I have one who's going to graduate here soon, but I definitely have approached things very differently with him than I did with Henry.
Mm.
And so I learned a lesson and I took that lesson and I moved it forward. And do I have regrets that that lesson had to be learned late? Yes. But I also take that lesson and I move forward with it. And like I said, I just love the shit out of him. I just love him all the time. And I just tell him how great he is and how much I think he's cool as shit. And I'm not just like saying it all the time for no reason. He came the other day and he's an HVAC and plumber and he put my tub in and put my toilet in and did all this shit. And I was like, dude, I am so proud of you. Like you're kind of a badass at this, man. And he was like, oh, it's not that big of a deal. This is the 500 toilet I put in or something. And I'm like, no, I'm so proud of you. Like, this is awesome. And so
Mhm.
I take those moments to be intentional with him at. And I'm so glad that 'cause I could have just avoided it. I could have said, okay, I'm done being a parent, so I don't have to worry about these things anymore. But I wanted to understand what was happening for me because I know it has to show up in other areas. It's not just him. If I see, I don't know, my wife do something that I feel like, oh God, how's this going to turn out? Am I going to communicate with her because I'm running off of fear? I want to know that. And so I wanted to kind of dig into and investigate more of what my experience was, what I was thinking about at those times. And that's the best part about therapy is she reinforces positive things. She questions, negative points of view. She just kind of helps me sort through my thinking so that I
Mm,
can approach things differently. And again, it's not back to like she's correcting me or she's making me better. She's making me understand how I think. She's helping me see how my point of view might have been skewed and that there were other things happening for me outside of me just trying to parent my kid. And
yeah,
that's one of the benefits.
yeah. Yeah, that's fantastic. And I really want to go a little bit further with that, Simon, if you're okay with that. Because what I'm hearing is that Jen was just so influential with you on her points and just tr really trying to help, right? And not everybody has that,
Mm.
right? Sometimes parents are can be on two different teams. It can seem like sometimes, like just how one parent parents and how the other parents can be two different things, and they can be at odds with how they're doing it.
Hmm.
And let's say a dad is just really to the point, and it's like, damn it, I want to hear this, I want to see this. Let's Let's get the shit done. Sometimes dads can just really be to the point. And mom might be going, "Hey, you need to not be talking to our son like that."
Hmm.
And it can be different. And this is where um I guess I feel strongly that a therapist can really be a person that you can be very real with without feeling like you're going to get judged.
Hmm.
Let's say I open up to my wife about how I was parenting my daughter. I maybe Tammy i- is really critical of me. So
Mm.
I was being an asshole. I was not being a good guy. I was not being the dad that um, I should be. And I can
Hmm.
feel like I can't talk to Tammy about this. All she's gonna do is, know, make me feel like crap. So I
Hmm.
don't want it. And this isn't actually the case. But, a lot of people do feel that I can't actually have that conversation with my partner because I'm just gonna hear about how bad I am.
Mm. Yeah.
And so therapy can really be a great place to be able to be very real without getting judged. I
Yeah.
we can
Yeah.
just
It's a
hear
really
it.
good point. If you have a spouse that you're able to talk to about these things, and you're right, Jen is a very soft, warm, loving person. Um, and the person I always wanted to find is really what it is. And
Awesome.
really thoughtful. And she was very influential on me, very influential on me. Just from her demeanor. She was that. I mean, she was a kindergarten teacher for a long time, so she has these really amazing abilities to recognize when things positive are happening and lean into that. And I often did the opposite, where it was like when I saw something pop up, and even though I knew you need to have, was it seven positives for every negative? I knew all that shit that didn't apply to me for some reason. And
Mhm.
so she just taught me how to be softer and that softness allowed me to recognize more of the positives. And sometimes it's hard. Sometimes it's like, hey, thanks for putting your shoes by the door like I asked you to. I really appreciate that. When internally I'm like, I've told you this 1,000 goddamn times, and just now you finally figured it out. Great. That would be my attitude in my head.
Yeah.
Instead of being like, hey, there's a positive. They just learn they're getting it, and maybe it takes them more time than the average person. Who gives a shit? And so she allowed me to have more perspective, I think, too.
Right.
And something happened last night. Jen asked me to do something. I forget what. She was like, I'm doing a lot of projects in my house, And we're kind of gearing up towards graduation this coming weekend, and then graduation party the following weekend with the house to look nice. Um, and she said something, "Hey, can you take care of this thing before the party?" And I said, I'm gonna try to be really specific about this. I said, sure, I can do that. I'll just keep killing myself with all these other things and I'll just fucking jam that thing in there along with it.
Mm,
And I said it, I was probably a little bit meaner than that. And man,
mm,
I fucking caught it. When it happened,
mm,
it felt like a very old feeling. It felt
mm,
uncomfortably comfortable because that was not something I was not used to. I'm used to that kind of reaction. It's a very old reaction, so I was able to recognize it when it happened. And
mm,
right when it happened, she didn't react. She fucking did a great job. She didn't
mm.
react. I think she could see that I was overwhelmed, and I
Ah,
caught it in that moment. And I said, "Wow, I'm really sorry. That that
mm,
came out not how I wanted it to come out. I can definitely try to get those things done, but I think I'm definitely feeling really overwhelmed right now." And she's like,
yes.
"I get it. I understand." You know,
Mm,
and that would have been a conversation between the two of us that would have probably sunk the night, so to speak, where I would have been pissed off and kind of stoic and stewing, and she would have been kind of doing her own thing, going like, "Oh, I fucked up. I said something that set him off." And so I'm so grateful for my therapy. I'm so grateful. People are thinking we're just like, I know we're promoting therapy, but I fucking love it because that a moment allowed me to recognize what was happening internally. And I spent enough time reflecting and being aware of my reactions and how I respond to things due to my internal reaction and my internal lived experience that then allows me to catch those moments. And I mean, I felt bad that I said the thing I said, but I wasn't beating myself up about it. I caught it. I was like, okay, we just did the thing. We're not we're doing things differently now. So what
Yeah.
was that about? I'm feeling overwhelmed. I feel like I have a lot on my plate. That was like the feather on top of the pile. And but I got to catch it. And even though I was able to apologize and not feel like I was like capitulating or saying sorry when I didn't really mean it. Those kind of things, the reaction I had was honest and I just would have liked to have presented it in a different way, you
Very
know?
real.
And so
Absolutely.
that's why I find so much benefit from therapy because it helps my thinking. Does it take effort and take time? Yes. Does it take work? Yes. But the work allows for those kind of moments to not be a shit show because we're both more present. She didn't react. She didn't get pissed off and angry. She recognized that something was happening. And I think I probably was able to process a little bit differently because I didn't see her reaction, right?
Mm,
So we're both in therapy, we're both working on this stuff, and look
right.
what happened. It was a beautiful thing. I'm glad it happened. It reminds me that I'm still human. I still have moments where I get overwhelmed. I now
Yes.
have a partner that can see that overwhelm and be thoughtful to that and didn't, what are you being so defensive for? Why are you being an asshole? She could have gone
Mm,
down that route, but
right.
she didn't. She allowed me the space to kind of, okay, I want to do that differently next time and be thoughtful about it. And I didn't beat myself up about it either. It was like, okay, that was an old shit. It's old shit. How do we want to do it next time?
Yeah.
And so when I realized that, I apologized. And I was like, I didn't want to respond like that. Sorry. I'm overwhelmed by it. But the sorry didn't feel like it was a sorry just to make her feel better.
Yeah.
It was a
Right.
sorry
Right.
for me to be like, I'm going to keep doing the stuff differently. I want to make sure that I'm showing up in the best way I can, even when I'm overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Simon, I just really want to just capture for a moment. I know this is maybe a tangent, but I just really want to uh, share how amazing that interaction is. Because, we work with couples a lot, and
Mm.
our goal is to get them to that point, right? Where your emotions and how you are reacting is real. It's like, boom. It's like, I am freaking overwhelmed. I don't think I can do this. And for you to just suddenly be completely overwhelmed and you react. And then for Jen to just be there for it.
Hmm.
She wasn't attacking, she wasn't critical. She saw that this was overwhelming, which then made it so much easier for you to catch. this in yourself, it's like, oh, yeah, I am overwhelmed and I didn't like how I reacted. And
Hmm.
then you genuinely were sorry for how you reacted and you tried to make it better. It's like you trying to get across to Jen, okay, I did not say that right. That did not come out well. That's not how I want to come across. And I'm sorry about that.
Hmm.
You repaired it, right? And she's just there for it. And you guys probably moved on
Hmm.
really quick from that.
Well, and
Mm.
what's funny too is even later on, I think I said something like, uh, on Saturday, I'll have time to get these things finished. I might be
Mm.
able to get that thing done too. Like
Ah,
the overwhelm was just all the things in my own head I had stacked up.
yeah.
And there's not a lot of space, but it allowed for me to understand that there might be space. I was like, okay, to do that thing takes about 2 hours. I
Hmm.
have 8 to 10 on Saturday. Um, I'll try to make sure I do that. I'll make sure I'll see if I can work that in there. And if I can, I can. If I can't, I can't. But it even allowed me the space to reflect on, well, I might be able to pull that off too. And I
Eh,
think using that point too, Paul, might be a good thing to turn to kind of um, turn towards the idea of masculinity and parenting, because I
mm.
think sometimes it doesn't allow us to apologize to our kids
Oh,
because
yeah.
we feel like we have to be like, I'm right, I'm the dad.
Right.
Um, I'm going to take care of this thing the way I want to take care of it. I'm not going to question it. And I think, excuse me, that I could have easily, or I could say that I have probably experienced it in the same kind of situation. And when I had that response, maybe it was even worse, like, you
Mm.
fucking have all this shit for me to do, and I can't do it all. And you're giving me too much shit. And so I feel like I am telling her what I want but it's coming out in a way that I don't question. Like I am right in saying this thing this way,
Mm. Right.
and I'm angry and I'm overwhelmed, and so I have a right to feel this way and lash out, so to speak.
Right.
And I think as men, because society sees us in a way of like we're fixers,
Hmm.
providers, stability, however you want to phrase it. And that comes with a lot of pressure. And I'm not trying to say poor me, middle-aged white guy, that I have to deal with these pressures. It's more of like we can find ourselves in a space where we feel like we're doing the right thing because that's kind of what society says for us and how
Right.
that shows up. If my son falls, I was thinking this the other day when we were talking about you and I on one of the podcasts were saying, if you're told your whole life, like, get over it, your emotions don't really matter, suck it up, whatever.
Right.
After that conversation, I was at some point was reflecting on that. And I remember as a parent telling my kids, um, oh, just dust, you fell down. Oh, just dust it off. You'll be okay.
Yeah.
So even though it was more quiet and not so shitty, it still wasn't necessarily validating their feelings and
Hmm.
what was happening. And that
Yeah.
was more of a guy thing for me of like, suck it up, let's do this. Like we all
Mm.
fall down and bump our legs,
Yeah.
And we can do the exact same thing. Because what we're wanting them to, my thought is that we're wanting them to do is be able to get through hard moments. I hurt myself.
Yep.
What I got to do to take care of it and then move on. And I think we all do that. And so
Hmm.
we're wanting that for our kids. But being able to sit with your kid and be like, oh God, I'm so sorry. You hurt your knee. That must really hurt really bad.
Hmm.
Yeah, it really, really hurts. Okay, well, do you want a Band-Aid? What can help? How can I do to help you? No, I'll be okay. Well, hey, good job, man. Dust yourself off and you can go off to your next thing.
Mm.
That to me, that's a perfect scenario. Way 2020 vision from the past. But we can still do the dad thing, but
Yeah.
do it in a way that has them aware of what the emotions are that they're feeling so they can move through that emotion and then move on to something else.
Yeah. 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 I love that. So Simon, I see a lot of kids, doing play therapy, and one of the things I talk to parents about uh, is to create a secure attachment.
Hmm.
We, as parents, to our kids and to our family, to be soothing, to help other people feel safe, and to feel seen. And
Mm.
I love your example of, your son, you know, falling on the ground, hurting his knee, getting it all scraped up. You actually like seeing that they're hurt. That sucked. That hurt. Uh, and created safety for them to feel that. It's like, this
Mhm.
hurt. I don't want to play anymore, whatever it might be. And you were soothing. And so they were able to move on and get back in the game because they actually were seen.
Mm.
They felt safe that they could express that hurt to you, and you were soothing. And so they were able to move from that feeling of ouch, that hurt, to getting back in the game so quick, you know? But
Mhm.
when we don't see how our kid feels, like, quit your crying, let's get back in the game. They're not feeling safe to feel the way that they do. They're
Right.
not feeling seen, that actually hurt. And they're not being soothed. So they might really not feel connected during that time. Right? It's
Yeah.
like, oh, I'm disappointing my dad.
Hmm.
I'm not tough enough, or whatever it might be.
Yeah. And I think that was, I mean, I'll just say that, me saying dust it off, you'll be fine was not super harsh, but it wasn't necessarily connecting with them and having them felt, what they were feeling at the time wasn't validated. It was probably the best way
Yeah.
to put it. I'm kind of using technical terms, but I wasn't validating their feeling and then also validating that it's okay to express it. That's how I think of it. And
Yeah.
I spent a lot of my time as a kid being kind of alone a lot and
Mm.
having to deal with a lot of shit on my own.
Yeah, me
And
too.
so I remember a very specific moment of I was at a neighbor's house. We lived in the country. They had just gotten a tractor with a big mower on the back. It was really cool.
Mm.
I was off by myself and I was looking at this huge mower behind this tractor. And sorry, we're from the Midwest. We love shit like that. I think it's awesome. We love tractors and diggers and things like that. But I was walking around this thing and like looking at it, and I kind of stepped on the edge of it and was looking inside, and I fell over and I hit my thigh and I got a terrible Charlie horse. And I
Oh.
remember I rolled off of it and I was on the ground, and I remember thinking, it hurt so bad. And I remember thinking how badly I wanted a parent there to help me. And there
Mm.
was nobody there. And that was often the case when I was alone. And again, my parents were good parents. They weren't like, completely negligent. But I did have time where I didn't have anybody else. And I'm
Yeah.
only thinking of this in the moment, Paul, but I didn't have anybody else to reflect that to. I didn't have anybody else to care for me, pick me
Mm.
up, dust me off, say, I'm sorry you hurt yourself. Do you need something else to then move on? And I'm doing a very specific memory in a very specific way. So I'm not trying to denigrate anybody, but I think that's where that came from. And if I hadn't gone to therapy so that I can understand how I'm thinking about things, how I'm processing things, because I'm running off of a very old theme in that situation. So if I take that situation of wishing I had had these things and didn't have them, and then as an adult, my kid falls down. I see that. I'm only going off of my own experience of having been left alone and having not had anybody there to help me in this specific situation. And that may have come out in that moment too. I don't know. I'm just guessing at the moment. But that may have been one of those things like I grew up not having anybody help me. I grew up having to dust myself off on my and do it all on my
Yep.
own. So you can do it too.
Yep.
And that's not necessarily a good or a bad thing. It's just that was my lived experience, and that might be why I reacted the way I reacted with my own kids. And again, if you're thinking about coming into therapy because you just want to understand how you think or you want to be the best parent you could be,
Mm-hmm.
then that's the cool part is you can learn all this stuff. Like we don't know, and we can figure out what we can do differently the next
Yeah.
time, And we all want to love I mean, men love their kids as deeply as their moms do. It's just that simple. We just show up in a different way sometimes. And that can be influenced by our past, by society and their expectations of men. It can show up in lots of different ways. But I
Right.
think that example, I kind of, it kind of came to fruition all on its own, that situation. But it's a good point of what therapy is beneficial for, to be able to understand all of that stuff that just happened. And I only had the ability in this moment just now to talk about it like that because I've had so much opportunity to reflect with my therapist about situations and things like that that influence my thinking and my way of being as a person or as a parent. And that's one of the benefits is that I'm not saying my parents were assholes and they fucked me up. I'm saying I had these moments where they weren't around. I didn't have the safety and the reassurance that I needed. And that might have influenced how I talked to my kid and dealt with those situations.
Mhm.
Well, everybody who's been listening, we really appreciate the time that you spent with us today. Just so you know, we are ending part one of the Parenting and Masculinity podcast. So we really appreciate you coming in and listening to us. We hope you got something from it. And just know that this is the ending of part one. And we really want to make sure that we offer things that are going to be helpful for everybody when it comes to trying to understand therapy and what it means to come in and do therapy and give you topics that feel like they resonate. All right. Well, thank you everybody for being here, and we really appreciate it. And just so you know, we love you and we care about you, and we're glad you're listening and taking the time to do it. So we appreciate it. So have a good rest of your day.
Take care.
All right. And now for our disclaimer. The content shared in this podcast is for educational and informational purposes only and is not intended to be a substitute for professional mental health treatment, diagnoses, or advice. Although we are licensed therapists, this podcast does not establish a therapist-client relationship between the host and the listeners. The discussions, examples, and opinions shared are based on our professional experience and perspectives, but they are not personalized to your specific situation. If you're experiencing emotional distress, mental health concerns, or a crisis, we strongly encourage you to seek support from a qualified mental health professional in your area. If you are in immediate danger or need urgent assistance, please contact local emergency services or a crisis hotline. In the US, you can call 988 for suicide hotline. By listening to this podcast, you acknowledge and agree that the hosts are not providing therapy, counseling, or clinical services, and any actions you take based on the content are your own responsibility. Listener discretion is advised, as some topics may include discussions of trauma, mental health challenges, or sensitive experiences. Thanks.